Hello, good evening. My name is Catherine from SEB Housing. I know we might still have a few people joining in, but I want to get started tonight. If you can't hear me or if anything is off with the audio or video, let me know. Tonight, we're going to run the lottery for the 12 affordable rental units at Connect55 Plus in Bourne. We're going to get the lottery underway in just a few moments. If you have any questions during this Zoom meeting, you're encouraged to go ahead and type them into the chat box that we have in Zoom, or you can unmute yourself momentarily. You will have noticed that when you came into this session that you were muted. So if you do unmute yourself, we just ask that you go ahead and mute yourself again so we can minimize any outside noise. So before we do the drawing, just want to give you some background information on the lottery, how many applicants applied for these units. No need to write any of this information down. It's going to be in a follow-up email to you that you'll get later on tonight. All households that are going to be in the lottery should already have a lottery application number. So in this case, that is in the form of a series of numbers. So A.001, for example, is someone's number. Let me know if you do not have that, because that is what I'm going to be calling out tonight rather than names for privacy purposes. So you want to have that number handy. So there were 12 affordable units. We received 24 completed applications. So there's going to be 24 households in this lottery. There is a local preference or priority for these homes. You indicated on your application whether or not you're currently living or working in Bourne, and that would qualify you for that local preference. Households with local preference are going to have higher positions on the waiting list that are established after the lottery tonight than those who don't have local preference. So there are 7 two-bedroom affordable apartments. There were a total of 8 completed applications. 2 of those applicants qualify for local preference. There are also 3 one-bedroom apartments. We received 21 completed applications for those one-bedroom apartments, and 7 of those applicants have local preference. There's also 2 one-bedroom disabled accessible units, and we received 3 completed applications for those units, and 1 of those households has local preference. You have not yet submitted verification of local preference, but that will be required later on. So again, I'm not going to be calling out anybody's name tonight. It will be that application number that you want to listen for. When I start the drawing, I'm going to be putting the index cards that I have here. There's 24 index cards here into this lottery box that's next to me. I'm going to, these have already been shuffled up. I'm going to give it a good shuffle while it's in there as well. I'm going to pull each number and I will show it to you by showing it to the camera so you can see it. And I'll record it for myself. Just write it down over here so I don't have to rewatch the drawing, so I can have the order. So following the lottery, each lottery household is going to be sent an email. Like I mentioned, it's going to have a synopsis of the number of applicants we received and all of that. It's also going to tell you what the next step in the process is. And the sorted waiting lists are going to be attached to that email. Once you receive that email, you're going to be able to locate your application number on the waiting list to see precisely where you stand on those waiting lists. Once I've taken local preference into account. So the order in which your number is drawn tonight isn't necessarily the number that you're going to be on the waiting list. So the first number that I draw, that doesn't mean that that person is number 1 on any of the waiting lists, because they still have to be sorted in accordance to the preference, the local preference. Once you receive that email with the waiting list, you're going to notice that the top households on each list are highlighted in green. That is indicating that those households are going to immediately be invited to move forward in the process to move on to the next step, which is completing a lease application with the leasing office at Connect. The leasing office's contact information is going to be shared with you in the email that you received tonight. and your contact information is going to be shared with the leasing office following the lottery tonight. That is so you can coordinate a tour of the unit, you can fill out that lease application, and hopefully move towards reserving one of the affordable apartments. Your placement on the waiting list determines when you'll be eligible to reserve a unit. So after we've sorted and sent you those waiting lists tonight, if you're the first person on that 1-bedroom waiting list, for example, you're going to be the first household to select a unit, which is why it's beneficial to be towards the top of the waiting list. You'll have your first choice of apartment. If you're not one of those top households on the waiting list tonight, you're not going to be moving forward at this time. However, if for one reason or another, one of the top households on the waiting list ultimately decides not to rent a unit, households further down on the waiting list will then be contacted to move forward. And this happens all the time. So if you're not highlighted in green on the waiting list that are sent tonight, it doesn't mean that you will not be asked or to move forward or have an opportunity, but you will not be moving forward right away. It's also important to keep in mind that SCB Housing, we have only completed an initial program screening for your household, and that was just based off of what you self-reported on your lottery application. You haven't yet been found eligible by the leasing office at Connect. So even if you're the top household on the waiting list following the lottery, if you're currently renting an apartment somewhere else, you don't want to give notice to your landlord immediately since you don't yet know if you're qualified to rent a unit at Connect. Once the household has been found lease eligible and you've reserved a unit with the leasing office is going to notify SCB Housing, and then we will require you from SCB Housing, we will require you to submit your income, asset, and tax documentation that you haven't yet been asked to provide. So again, we only did a preliminary review of your finances based on what you self-reported on that lottery application, but we still need to confirm that you are eligible for the affordable housing program after you reserve an apartment, and that in order to do that, we're going to be reviewing your income, asset, and tax documentation. So even after you choose a unit, you're not yet eligible to sign that lease because you need to be found eligible by SCB Housing for the affordable housing program. So still a few more steps in the process. This lottery is not the end of the process. Still a couple more steps before you're able to sign a lease. When you receive your lottery, back when you received an email from us with your lottery application number, that email had an attachment, which was the documentation requirements guide. And that guide details everything that you're going to need to submit to SCB Housing in terms of how many pay stubs, that sort of thing. So just, if you haven't already, take a look at that. If you're one of the top households on the waiting list after tonight, you're going to be asked to gather that information. And you'll have about 10 days to do so. The leasing office has told us that the affordable units are now ready. So leases will be available for you immediately once you're fully approved. So once you are qualified to rent one of the units and sign a lease, and you've also been approved by SCB Housing for the affordable housing program, those units should be available for you pretty quickly. And then finally, just a reminder, if you end up renting one of these apartments or any affordable apartments, you're going to need to recertify your income annually. So just a heads up on that, the Connect leasing office will ask you a few months in advance of your lease renewal date to submit documentation regarding your income and finances. So we just suggest that any person who is renting an affordable apartment maintains a file with your income, asset, tax documentation for as long as you live in an affordable apartment, just so you have that at the ready. All right, so I'm ready for the drawing. Does anybody have any questions before I start in terms of how this will go, or questions about next steps? Everybody has their number. All right, so I'll start the drawing now. Again, these are the note cards here I'm going to be placing into the box next to me, and they've already been shuffled. I'm going to shuffle them up again here. and I'll be pulling the 24 cards out, showing them to the screen, and the waiting lists will be formulated after the drawing tonight. So I'm going to move the camera a little bit. We've had some people who'd like to just make sure they can see here. Well, I don't know how much more you can see, but here they are going into the box here. Move around, and then I'm going to just take a moment to jot down the numbers as I pull them out. All right. Here we go. This is, again, the lottery for Connect 55 Plus and Bourne. First number drawn is 7. So I'm not going to say A.00, just 7 there. 21. 15. 2. 24. 4. 13. 10. 17. 22. 23. 16. 6. 12. 3. 20. 9. 19. 11. 5. 14. 18. And the final number in here is 1. So again, that was the drawing for the 12 affordable apartments at Connect 55 Plus in Bourne, which is the Buzzards Bay area of Bourne. That was the drawing. That's not the order of the waiting list. There's 3 waiting lists, one for the 2-bedroom apartments, one for the 1-bedroom apartments, and one for the 1-bedroom disabled accessible apartments. You might be on more than one of those lists if you applied for and were eligible for more than 1 unit, meaning 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, 1-bedroom disabled accessible, etc. So when you get the email tonight from me, it will come from info@scbhousing.com, and it will have a couple of attachments. One attachment is just the lottery night handout, which has information, some of the information that I shared with you tonight in terms of next steps, and the lottery pool. So how many local preference households on each waiting list, that sort of thing. And then the other attachment is the actual waiting list, which you will find your number on that waiting list, your lottery application number, and you'll be able to see where you are on the waiting list. If you're highlighted in green, you'll be asked to move forward right away by the leasing office and move on to the next step, which is completing their lease application. Any questions on the drawing or the process moving forward? All right, so keep an eye out tonight for that. We have an email address for everyone. Keep an eye out for that tonight. And of course, if you have any questions on the waiting list themselves when you see them or next steps, just let us know. I hope you have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. Bye now.